This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome to another episode of Speak Up, Effective Communication. I'm your host, Craig O'Neill, and in today's episode, we will be talking about your client relating capability. Seems simple, it is. We're going to dive into the term, which I think will help us all refocus as an industry, and it's relevant to today's market, very specifically. Why? Slower days are here again for many shops across the country. I touched on this pretty well in episode 14. That's going to be one I'm going to encourage you to listen to. We discussed a digital communication mistake common for those facing those sudden slow spells, unique to the market now. The mistake is sending mass text blasts. I've had the notion for a long time that despite being a technology guy, there's a lot of hands-off over-reliance on CRM systems and simultaneously a gradual relaxing of the skills and activities that would or could benefit shops most if they truly want to have a successful long-term retention strategy. Now, in episode 14, I say text blasts are a mistake, largely because it is a very short-term retention strategy, and that it can have devastating consequences on your business. So I implore you to check out the episode 14, Digital Communication, what your opt-outs are really telling you, because towards the conclusion of that episode, I drew a clear distinction between an audience versus a community. This isn't my concept. I'm just the messenger here, but I quoted from the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age. I'm going to voice it again here, quoting here. Often forgotten is the long-term plan. Businesses call it a customer retention strategy, but it is best thought of as a lively, meaningful dialogue among a community of friends. If the foundation of all long-term success is the establishment of trust-based relationships, then the goal of all interaction should be to convey value as soon and as often as possible. There are common hurdles to overcome. That's ending the quote from the Dale Carnegie Associates, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age. So in episode 14, what I did with that quote is I did identify 5 hurdles related to that topic of retention that I see in the aftermarket, very specific on the concept of digital communication. You can check those out, but I want to point out the 5th hurdle that I mentioned in episode 14, and that is the topic for today's episode. That 5th hurdle was, we do not have our businesses oriented towards customer relationships. I'm going to say that again. We do not have our businesses oriented towards customer relationships. And before we dive into that statement, we must introduce a term that I desperately want to normalize in our industry discussions, and that term is client relating capability. We'll discuss what this term means, how it is kind of clarified. It's really clarified what I'm feeling, and there's a lot about how I hope it does change our industry once it's more embraced. We're going to do that, but first we're going to hear from our sponsors who make this podcast possible right now. Looking to take your shop to the next level of quality service, team culture, and overall profitability? At the Institute, we provide personalized coaching that aligns with your goals of financial stability, excellent customer service, and employee satisfaction. Our priority is helping you establish significant and sustainable progress. We work with you to create strategies that reduce the stress of running your business, improve your quality and performance, and optimize your profitability. Experience the benefits of professional coaching by visiting wearetheinstitute.com/business-assessment. Hey friends, as you know, I'm a proud member of the AutoFlow team, and let me tell you, we've changed how business is done for auto shops everywhere. We support your client experience before, during, and after the work is done. Imagine this: timely updates sent directly to your clients, branded digital vehicle inspections, and seamless communication from start to finish. That's why shops love AutoFlow. And hey, with those 5-star reviews rolling in, you'll wonder how you ever managed without us. Take an important next step and take your auto shop to the next level. Visit www.autoflow.com. get on board with an AutoFlow trial. Are you ready to meet your perfect auto repair shop management software partner? Well, say farewell to the days of transactional relationships and hello to a true partnership that elevates your business. The number one all-in-one solution is AutoLeap. You're not just getting software, you're gaining a dedicated ally committed to your success. AutoLeap will help you sell more, save time, and delight your customers at every turn. From scheduling appointments to creating estimates, generating invoices, managing technicians, and seamlessly syncing with QuickBooks to keep your records updated. Experience the difference a true partnership makes. Visit Autoleap.com and book a demo today. Autoleap, your trusted partner for success. Want to see your auto repair shop thrive? Are you looking to drive more customers to your auto repair shop? Let ShopDog Marketing be your guide. Our customer-first approach, combined with AI-driven creative content, ensures top rankings. Dominate mobile first and voice search with our specialized expertise. Reach out to ShopDog Marketing today and start growing your business. Don't miss out on this chance to boost your business. Visit shopdogmarketing.com. Inbound has exclusively served independent auto repair shops with expert communication solutions for years. Our robust VoIP platform ensures you stay connected while our industry-leading AI analytics take your business to the next level. We provide the tools you need to understand your customers and optimize every interaction. Choose Inbound for proven expertise and unmatched innovation. Visit callinbound.com and discover the difference we can make. Okay, we're back. Are introducing the term client relating capability. Now, on the surface, this term really kind of defines itself. It's the term for our ability to connect to and relate with the people we are doing business with. But there's more to it than that, as I personally would discover as I started down a little investigative journey into this thought and feeling that I was having. So it's worth telling you how I came to this path to give you the full picture. This episode will actually have really three parts to it. There's what led me to this term, and then there's three components of client relating capability. We'll go into that. And then there's a mistake that shops make that's preventing better client relating capability. There are some solutions to consider. We'll probably dive into those a little bit here, but mostly I want you to become acquainted with the term in this episode and some of the components to it. And so if we succeed in that, I think this is going to be very, very much worth your time. So let's go into it. Now, there's how I found this term, client relating capability. It began because I was considering this topic completely absent of any term whatsoever. It was really probably, I would say, during the early phase of the pandemic. It wasn't because of the distance or lack of connection that was, brought on by the fears of public health. It was that shops were busier than ever during that time. Many of you will remember this. And during that busyness, I saw many processes strain under that pressure and watched the quality of care eventually, but not hugely, but yeah, measurably precipitate. I believe it was really best reflected in the 2023 JD Power report. That's the JD Power report's the client satisfaction in the aftermarket. And they cited that the performance of the service advisor was down. And I believe I've cited this before. The JD Power press release from 2023, I've used this many times. And if you've ever seen some of my courses in person, I usually have a slide where I'm showing this particular report. So let me quote it here for you. And I am quoting here. According to the JD Power 2023 U.S. Aftermarket Service Index, the ASI study released on May 2 of 2023, overall satisfaction declines year over year in three segments that comprise the study: quick oil change, full service maintenance and repair, and tire replacement. Customer satisfaction, I'm continuing the quote, customer satisfaction is lower for the performance of the service advisor, specifically noting increased wait time and fewer advisors providing helpful advice. There is also a lower satisfaction with service advisor courtesy. End quote. All right. Customer satisfaction lower for the performance of an advisor, the person who's in the front lines relating with our clients, right? Increased wait times, fewer advisors providing helpful advice, and lower satisfaction with basic courtesy. Three things that sound to me very much like a very busy shop. And that's exactly what shops were through a large portion of 2023, right up into the end of that year, I feel. And that study, of course, was looking at a lot of activity that was still in 2022. Now, as loyal Speak Up listeners know, and anyone who has attended any of my courses at industry events, I frequently cite my dear friend and coach, Bob Greenwood, who we lost too soon back in 2021. Now, whenever I read that report from JD Power or discuss it, and of course, I hear Bob Greenwood adamantly urging me back when I was in my family business to slow down, breathe, slow down. It is something I mentioned before in this podcast as well. And just the ability to pause in conversation. I think it's such relevant advice. And I hear Bob all the time on this. So back then, there was no pandemic for me. Is we were just charging too little, trying to do too much, failing to really focus on our clients, all because we were working to serve more customers. We were at capacity. We were stressed out. The shop felt like absolute chaos. We were exhausted. Our circumstances then were very different to the pandemic era. But back to shops in 2023, I realized that these shops are also at capacity, different reasons, but they were at capacity. So much so that many were actually failing to relate with their clients, fully convey the value of their services, and really just connect in a meaningful way that's going to create a return visit. It was at this time, I'm going to say, I thought of a term myself. I still think I may have coined this term. I had this idea of the term client relating capacity, as though there was some definable metric, some KPI for what the absolute capacity is that we could handle for clients before things start to fall apart. I think it could become a metric. I really do. But yeah, I was so convinced that I coined a term. I actually started Googling that. And this is where I started to find uh, the article that would lead me to the term client relating capability. Nothing was turning up in my client relating capacity search. But what did keep turning up was this article titled Creating a Superior Customer Relating Capability by a man named George S. Day. It kept coming up in my search, and finally I actually opened it up and it just absolutely gripped me. I fell in love with a lot of things in this article because it really hit what I was feeling in a way that I had not heard articulated before. I love it when an article, a book, or anything can do that. It's just a beautiful thing. So let's go into that article a little bit. This article had three specific claims that jumped out at me in really basically the first paragraph of the article. George S. Day states that in most markets, one or two companies will outperform their rivals. He also stated that their advantage doesn't have much to do with CRM tools or technologies. He says those are necessary things, but by themselves are insufficient. The difference maker is superior customer relating capability. So, yes, first and foremost, you may have heard a difference in terms. As I cited this, George Day did use the phrase customer relating capability, but my coach was Bob Greenwood. Remember this, right? So now know the difference. I know the difference because Bob Greenwood was my coach between customers and clients. That's probably another topic we can dive into another day, but let me just say that I've tweaked the term a little bit from George's article, and I call it client relating capability. I would call this a Bob George combo by using this phrase. All right. So I'm going to keep using the phrase client relating capability because in my context, let me put it simply like this. Customers don't really connect with our value proposition in the business, and they're much harder to relate to a client. They get it. They get it. That's as short as I can discuss that topic. All right. Day's article goes on to identify three organizational components that must work perfectly together to achieve what he calls a superior client relating capability. All right. So those three components, are these. Number one, orientation. That is that the business is oriented towards prioritizing retention so much that it gives employees the space to build relationships and just truly treat people differently. Right? Orientation, number one. Number two is configuration. Configuration or structure, use those interchangeably. It's referring more to the processes, workflows, and even incentives that promote or encourage our employees and staff to create relationships. All right. That's two. Number three, the third component is use of information. And typically, this is going to refer to our activities and the data that we're storing inside of our point of sale, our shop management system, our CRM systems as well. All right. So, those three components. Now, I'm going to go back because we want to think about orientation first. That's one of the things that we're going to take away from this article. And it's also key to understanding the mistake that most businesses make. As I see it today, and as I was validated in this article by reading this, the mistake is we focus more on the information in CRM tools first instead of last, as we should be. All right. We focus on the CRM first instead of last. If you need proof of this, I think it's really simple to just look at the social media shop owner who's asking everyone what is the best CRM program to use? I'm having a slow day, right? Or what is that best text blast I can type out? I'm having a slow day. Those sort of things. You're thinking about how to leverage some data that you have in some tool to do a thing that's very reactive and short term. I think that is a very common mistake. And as I was reading this article, it just really resonated with me. Now, there's another statement that I really connected with as well. And this is, let me read this to you as well. I'm quoting here. Software vendors and consultants keep bringing us new solutions. We know they are making the same pitch to our competitors and that we don't want to fall behind. And at the same time, most companies are not happy with the poor quality of their data and their continuing inability to obtain a full picture of their customers' history, activity, requirements, and problems. All right. Now, that was a quote, end quote here, also from George Estei's article written in 2003. Now, think about this for just a moment, please. 2003, what was new? Other than some of the global conflicts that continue today, I would say that what is new is the internet, and internet technology is making their way to businesses focusing on websites way more than ever before and a lot less on yellow pages and other things slowly, I think, in that time. Smartphones did not exist yet. And yet here is a situation where, wow, CRM systems not exactly solving an underlying problem. So I got to ask the question here, have we changed at all since then? Or have the solutions that we're being sold the only thing that is changing while the problem actually remains the exact same? Hey, I'm a technology guy. I like having this conversation. It's perfectly comfortable for me because I see another side of things on my day-to-day activities of helping people engage and leverage systems meaningfully right now. All right, so let's go into this. uh, I think in 2024 what was just described, it sort of resonates with me. I run into this all the time. There's the set it up for me owner who wants to be completely hands off in the retention program and doesn't even have any buy-in from their team to engage anything either, so it needs to run on its own. And that's just not how it goes, right? If you want to be hands off, that's all right as an owner, but you have to delegate something with a sense of purpose and priority and orientation, if you will, uh, to take care of these things. You can't have an outside firm take care of your customers. That you can't have an outside firm care more about your clients than you do. It shouldn't be that way. If it is, this is the problem with orientation, right? You might have a great system. A lot of things about it might be great, but if you're not oriented towards actually leveraging things really well and getting your team on board for it, you see where I'm going, right? There's another issue where there's poor quality just inaccurate pictures of relevant needs. I teach a class now on basically staging the next visit, leveraging DVI. It's kind of a new concept to a lot of people because everyone's using estimate data to do things. But the use of data is often very inaccurate in the shop management system, especially for shops that provide options on one thing or another. Maybe option A was selected, option B was declined, but it's the same type of job. Now we're recommending declined services to people who had picked a different options. Crazy stuff happens to data and it's not organized well, right? Then there's really, just like we mentioned in episode 14, there's these poorly cultivated lists that we kind of have the audacity to even refer to as an audience, as though here they are, they're watching me. And that's not really a proper title for people that didn't know they landed on a list or maybe never even opted into it in the first place. So, again, episode 14, I think we hit on that stuff really well. And now we fast forward to today where we're being sold. Dan Vance and I had a conversation on this in the most recent episode, episode 16, titled AI, hey, I have some concerns. And now, and I'm not going to knock that technology. It'll sound like I am very frequently. I'm actually a huge fan of what it can do to help us solve a few of the problems that we have organizing and using information. But what AI will not solve for us, it will not solve for us, are basic business orientation to prioritize retention and build relationships. That has to be done by ourselves or our people. And that has to be the first focus before we can engage a process or a workflow and then even use the data that we're putting into our CRM tools and technology to accomplish the task. So in George Estei's article, the thing that I loved about it so much is that he is making the statement that it isn't just component 1, 2, or 3, orientation, configuration, and use of information. It isn't just one. You need all 3 in your organization to be working perfectly in order to create what he calls a superior client relating capability. Now, what that looks like, I feel like, is the real big question. I feel like we've identified some key pieces that will certainly come up in future episodes. But as I state very, very frequently, we frequently pay lip service in our industry, in the aftermarket, of being a relationship based business. We even say sometimes that we're focused on communication training, as is the point of this podcast. But I also want to point out that I'm not suggesting that people abandon technology. I feel I've been very consistent on these sort of topics in conveying that technology cannot do the relating for us, nor should we want it to. But still today, there, I think, is frequent disappointment in CRM platforms that will not go away. And as George Day stated in the conclusion of his article, that the disappointment in CRM platforms, that should be a warning about how difficult it actually is to improve one's client relating capability. So we can't improve something if we do not have a term for the thing that we're improving. I give you this term. I found it in pieces, at least. Customer relating capability to client relating capability has a dash of so many influences that I have, but this has been a topic that I keep working into a lot of my presentations. And I have to give at least an example of that this time of year. This episode will be out on November 18. We're in the thick of tire season in our northern communities, and tire stores get very, very busy. I work with a lot of tire stores that are on a day-to-day basis trying to instill better systems and processes, and it's very hard in this climate. Not the cold weather climate, I mean the business climate, the market. When you're very busy, it's very hard to connect and even try to establish a basis for what a retention strategy would even involve for an individual. So many times, tire stores in particular are just focused on getting tires swapped out, summer set to winter set. They can't even do a thorough inspection, hardly get to know the customer. And the customer is really just asking, all I need is this thing swapped, missing out on really vital connection of what's wrong with their car and what their needs are for the vehicle over the coming season, all sorts of things. That busyness is essentially incentivized by the businesses. They don't say, hey guys, I want you to make sure you're connecting with people so that they're coming back in for the right reasons later on. No, the incentive is get it done by X amount of time and let's get as many of these done through there. It's a top down issue in many, many cases. And it's very difficult, even for the organizations that want to change it, to get the people that have been grown up into a business that's based on getting people in and out the door very quickly to start shifting their focus towards a better way of doing business that will help you stand out in your market. So that's the topic for today. We're going to consider the client relating capabilities specifically on the orientation side of things much more. Don't make the same mistake that a lot of shops make and focus first on use of information and the tools and technologies out there. Focus first on your mission and your identity as a business and how you want to be recognized in your market. Then you can start going and incentivizing your team to do some great communication training, listening to this podcast, joining our Toastmasters club, doing all sorts of things. And you must be able to give them the space and reward them in their day-to-day to do a good job making retention an absolute priority. Hey, check out episode 14 on this topic. Check out my conversation with Dan Vance. Thank you so much for listening. For our listeners, if you have questions for me or any of my prior guests, please make sure you reach out to me at speakup@CraigO'Neill.net. I love hearing your comments, suggestions, feedback, any topics that you want to hear about or speak about yourself. And remember, continue to listen up for our other shows on the Aftermarket Radio Network. We have Carm Capriato's Remarkable Results Radio, Hunt Demarest, Business by the Numbers, Matt Fonslow's Diagnosing the Aftermarket A through Z, Brian and Kim Walker's The Auto Repair Marketing Podcast, and Chris Cotton's Weekly Blitz. Hey, once again, I have to thank our sponsors for making this podcast possible. I love this topic for today. So, hey, let them know you heard about them here. And I think that they are also each of my sponsors in their own way. They have wonderful contributions on this topic, their own products and offerings and conversations. Just talk with them. They're wonderful people and they're sponsors on this podcast because, hey, we wanted them to be, and appreciate that very much. So as always, remember to listen up before you speak up and orient yourself towards a great client relating capability.
You've been listening to Speak Up, Effective Communication with Craig O'Neill on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Craig on your favorite podcast listening app and on his YouTube channel. Let him know what you'd like him to speak up about. Craig is all for advancing the automotive service aftermarket.